Today's 9/1, September 1st, 2025, and this is my second talk I wanted to do to you, my grandchildren. All right. Because I think this is also very important. This is something I think you should understand. And also something Sun Tzu wants to teach you. Alright? Like if you know the spirit of Sun Tzu, if you don't know the spirit of Sun Tzu, I'm trying to give you some of it right now. Okay? Like I know the spirit of Sun Tzu, I know the spirit of the Buddha, I know the spirit I know the spirit of Jesus. I should say Buddha. I'm not making any difference like, you know, the Buddha or Buddha. I mean, Buddha was a person, Jesus was a person, Sun Tzu was a person. So all three of them have spirits. Okay? I know the spirit of Sun Tzu, I know the spirit of Buddha, and I know the spirit of Jesus. And, you know, I don't know, Sun Tzu would want you to know right now, based on my last talk, you know, I showed the guy and he's a CIA guy, and he was making a critique of how when President got shot in the ear, if he got shot in the ear, I guess he did. Sometimes people can fake it, you know. Like he might just slapped his ear and made it look like he got shot, but you know, they said they got a picture of the bullet flying in the air. I don't know. Whatever. Anyway, it doesn't matter because it's all just spectacle. Anyway, all right. Because the real battle is going on behind the scenes, and what we have going on here is spectacle. But the spectacle is what makes people think that they have democracy, because at least they can fight about the spectacle. But the real stuff is going on behind the scenes, the covert operation, and that's actually the operation that's going to dictate what your life is going to be about. You know, you think, you know, all this spectacle stuff is it. No, what I was saying is, it's like blowing dust up in the air. That's what the spectacle is, all right? I'm not saying it wasn't important. I mean, I guess if Trump would have got shot in the head, that would have been important. But, you know, like, okay, because I want to play an explanation of the deep state, okay? But the deep state reminded me, of course, you know, of Sun Tzu, all right? And so I wanted to talk a little bit about, you know, lies, okay? Sun Tzu, and then lies, you know, because lies is associated with war, okay? Sun Tzu and the deep state, because the reason about the deep state is, like, I always just considered the deep state, you know, a lie. Because see what that is that's just, you know, grouping like every who you don't like into a group, and you name that the deep state, okay? And what that's like is saying God is this, and these are all the aspects of God, and you group in God, so God is that group, see? And you call that God. It's the same thing. And a lot of people got different gods. These are just names. This is name calling. You talk about the group state, you talk about God, you know, your God, your experience with God is definitely not, you know, a person in Iran, their experience of God, or Russia, or China, or Japan. I mean, all these disparate, you know, places. Anyway, so, you know, the thing about the deep state caught my interest, and like I said, okay, so I always just kind of considered it lies or bullshit. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to call this Sun Tzu lies, and then bull, and then S star, because bullshit and not bullshit, but deep state and deep shit have the same numbers of letters if I star them after the S for deep state or deep shit. And so anyway, here it is. Look, I'm just gonna tell you, okay? This is you learn this from Sun Tzu. If you get the spirit of Sun Tzu, then it's kind of like playing chess. Okay? Or in the Chinese, they got their chess name is Go, and it's even more. You got to utilize more strategy in Go than you do in chess. It's like I really understand. You know, Go is like it's not about overtaking. It's about building. Okay, so it's actually like a game that's actually of a higher elevation than stress. I mean, not stress, chess. And so I this is the spirit of Sun Tzu, and so I want to just tell you, okay, kind of like what Sun Tzu would say. And you know, he would say a couple of different kinds of ways that you can be at war, you know, and there's also there's a couple of ways, you know, more than a couple of ways that you can handle war, or that you first, oh, we're going to have a war, you know, you got to define the war. And a basic way is the use of lies. Okay, if you lie to somebody, then you are making them your enemy. And if somebody lies to you, then they are making you your enemy. And if somebody lies about you, then they're obviously making you their enemy. Okay? And you are their enemy. And unless you go be a monk or something like that, you know, like where you have very, very limited access to other human beings, you're probably going to be lied to, and somebody's going to lie to you about somebody else, or they're going to lie to you about their experience. You know, now in families, you know, sometimes people tolerate lying, like, you know, a parent, because their child, you know, is their child. And if their child lies to them, well, they might, you know, overlook it or kind of confront it and seek reconciliation or whatever. But it's tolerated. Oh, if you got ties, like, you know. And the same way in political realm, right? Like us and other countries. You know, America has lied. America has lied to the rulers in America. Have lied to the people of America, and the different groups have lied to the people of America. Okay, also, and America has lied to other countries, and all that. Other countries have lied to America, and we do things covertly to other countries. Other things do us covertly stuff to us. We spy in other countries, they spy on us, and that's kind of a form of lying, because you can look. There's two ways you can. You know, like like in psychology, for example, they, you know, have tough, like they got one thing is like, you know, being aggressive, and another thing is being passive aggressive. Okay, if you're passive aggressive, then you operate differently than if you're aggressive. If you're aggressive, you come head on. If you're passive aggressive, you do things secretly. You know, or you know, you try to punish somebody else by not talking to them. Okay, that's passive aggressive. And if a person doesn't like you, or you don't like somebody else, you might find yourself in a situation to not talk to a person, or not help a person, like, okay, especially like say for example, you know, you're working under Trump, and you don't like him, so you don't help him. That's one of the criticisms of, like, the CIA not helping Trump one time, you know, when he got shot in the ear. Okay, it's like they didn't want to help him. Like, they didn't want to take. They didn't care. They didn't want to take responsibility for it, because there's a bunch of different people on there. There's regular cops. There's the FBI. There's the CIA. You know, the guy that you heard talking on my last one, he's from the CIA. Anyway, so look, I don't want to belabor all that stuff, but you understand, there's you know, different ways and means for fighting and for being in war. And you know, unless, like I said, you're gonna be a monk or something and not have interaction with people or stuff like that, you know, or groups, you're gonna find war. You're gonna people are gonna try to trick you, all that kind of stuff. And that's the biggest thing that I'm always concerned about. You know, of course, is somebody tricking me, because I was tricked once and I ended up pushing a knife in my neck. So, just saying. You can be tricked and it can ruin your life. All right, and then you're gonna regret it. And so that's why I'm saying Sun Tzu is trying to warn you against that kind of stuff. Really, but I never really spent a lot of time, you know, listening to Sun Tzu, because it really wasn't my thing. But later on, when people came to war at me, and now I know a little bit more about Sun Tzu. Certain things I wouldn't do anymore. I wouldn't trust somebody and give them my phone, because I trusted somebody and gave them my phone one time. And they walked off with my phone. And then I realized, oh crap, man. I gave them my phone unlocked and they walked away. See? You can't make mistakes like that. Well, I've made mistakes like that before. And you know, you got to understand that things are never as they appear, and sometimes somebody can do something to hurt you, and you know, you have no idea that they're even going to try to hurt you or anything, or if they do hurt you or whatever. So you know, I was saying that you know, this guy caught my attention because he's talking about the deep state, and I never really paid much attention to the deep state. Kind of even always wondered, you know, what they even meant by the deep state. I didn't pay it no mind, just like I don't pay somebody's talking about God or whatever. I already got my opinion, you know, my personal experience. And they say, you know, my dad always said, you know, you can't argue with a person's personal experience. Okay. So, you know, I realized that, you know, everybody's got their own God. A lot of people got their own understanding of who was in the group state, if anything else. I mean, deep state, not group state. And I made that miss because it's like I said, it's like grouping. It's like grouping characteristics and then calling that God. Grouping the state, calling that God. You know, grouping whatever. Okay? God gave name to man gave name to all the animals in the beginning. Okay? That's what he grouped mankind. That's what we do from the beginning of time, is group things. But the thing you got to prepare for is, when, you know, don't get too relaxed. Because, okay, maybe you can group a bunch of animals, but you really can't group a bunch of people like that. Because, I mean, people are a lot different when it comes, you know, a lot of, even all my dogs, they're all completely different, all right? And they treat each other differently. One dog treat one dog this way, another dog won't treat that dog that way. All that. Boomer, he's the top dog, you know. He's like Trump, you know. I mean, he is kind of. I mean, he is really. He's like Trump. And you know, I got just different dogs, man. I don't mean to be going right now into all their different characteristics. Although, you know, it would be something for another talk, because they're all pretty cool. But they're all very different. I'm just saying. So the thing is, okay, there's different groups, and there's systems. Like there's systems in families, and even people will take on different roles. You know, one person might be like the emotional bearer, okay, because, you know, that person carries the emotion for the whole family, kind of deal. You know, one person might be the judge or something, you know. Like that person's characteristics is, okay, they're judge, you know. They make sure that, and you know, they are the judge, and they got it. They've already got it, you know, the verdict. Okay. Look, I'm just saying that when it comes to Sun Tzu, you really have to have an open mind and try to expand your mind in thinking about how to protect yourself and how to beware of what I think the Bible calls the guiles of people. I think it's Guiles, and the word beguile comes from that, I think, or maybe it's the wiles. If it's not guiles, okay, guile might be like an adjective. What? The wiles? I think actually both of them are words which reflect deception, and like wiles or guiles. In fact, I could call this one wiles and guiles. Okay, because actually that's what I'm talking about, all right? Because all these different things are ways that Sun Tzu helped us understand how we can look at things and how to and the big thing is, look, if somebody lies to you, you got to understand that actually that puts them in the position of enemy. And if you lie to somebody else, that puts you in position as enemy. Okay? And I'm saying sometimes in families there's, you know, the glue, family or friends can hold people together, but you will suffer the suffering of that knowledge and that experience of either becoming somebody's enemy or being somebody's enemy. And like I was saying, like, unless you become a monk, sure as hell gonna happen at some point in your life. And you're gonna have to deal with it. And even sometimes, okay, and it's really bad if somebody makes you believe something bad about somebody else, and then they are the ones that manipulated you, or manipulated you to believe something and then have feelings about the other person or persons, as though it weren't true. And that's like when you talk about like the rewriting of history and everything, about slavery and everything. Well, somebody can lie to you and make you believe something so that you have a certain attitude, because if you have a certain attitude, then it'll help them get away with what they want to do. And that's what the whole thing about slavery is, and like, Trump wanting to say slavery wasn't that bad and everything. He wants to teach that, so people don't have that sensitivity to the violations of justice. Our Declaration of Independence is that in there, and in one of the other, it might be Lincoln's letter, the Gettysburg Address or something, I don't know. But it says in several places, okay, Declaration of Independence and other places, and I think even in the Constitution, maybe the preamble, okay, that all men, it is self-evident that all men are created equal, okay? Now, when you try to make other people not equal, okay, you try to rig the game, make them your enemy, and I'm saying that it's sometimes passive aggressive, sometimes it's aggressive. Like I was thinking, like I have on my, on my head, I got a couple places that that are affected. Like I did go to the doctor once, bothering me, and I said, look, got something I can get rid of stuff with, because I keep getting it, and they said those are bites, and they and then if I scratch them and stuff, then of course then it turn into a sore, and, break the skin and all that, and it's hard. I mean, look, no, whatever, man, maybe the skin's gonna break anyway if it bites. I mean, but my main thing is like allergies. Like, I get itchy from some of the stuff at certain times of the year. I think it's the oak trees, actually, and I ain't gonna get rid of my oak trees. Anyways, there's oak trees everywhere. Look, when I was a kid, I had hay fever. That's a certain time of the year, you start sneezing and everything, because that's when all the pollens come out. Well, it's kind of like war, all right? Like, okay, like I get hit here, I get hit with like, you know, like sores, like pimples, like kind of, and sores, scratch them, basically, you know, turn into like a sore, and then whatever, you know, and then you know, and it's not, they're not lying to me. Well, it's a lie because I don't know, I really don't know about it. It's passive aggressive. It's still war. Man, you got to treat it like war. You got to counter it. You know. So I'm not gonna be, you know, like cussing at the invisible army that's affecting my head and making me getting sores on it. You know, I'm not gonna do that. I don't even really have to group it. I don't have to label it or anything. Okay, no words are being said, but they don't need to be. But you know, it's still at war. So people can war in silence, and you can war with nature in silence. You can war with your own appetite in silence. You can war with a lot of things in silence, and it's better to try to do it with dignity. And that's where putting Jesus and Sun Tzu together comes in. You know, because there always is a higher way, a better way. That's what we always got to look for, best practice. But so anyway, let me just put this on real quick, because this person describes the deep state, and I thought it was enlightening. So.
I could tell you, but I'd have to call Langley first to make sure that they let me tell you. I'm only kidding. The deep state is a combination of intelligence, CIA, NSA, Homeland Security, FBI, working together with the military, together with top industrialists, to sort of decide what is being done in the real world. So we elect a new president every 4 years or every 8 years. That president really is just a figurehead of sorts, because the deep state is making the decisions about whether we invade Iraq, whether we go to war, are we backing this side over that side in a given thing. And the U.S. is essentially in a permanent state of conflict or war, because that's what makes the most money. That's the deep state. And there is a reaction from what I call the center and right of the political spectrum that is immediately, and I get a lot of emails and direct messages from people on this who say, I think the deep state was involved in this because this was an attempt to kill Trump. That's what they believe.
So basically it's career bureaucrats who sort of are entrenched in the mechanisms of intelligence power, and the traditional, what we used to call, when I was growing up, the military industrial complex, where you have this, the people who are contracting the munitions and then working with intelligence. That makes sense. That's a sort of a believable thing. Like, these people, it's billions, if not trillions of dollars. All these people work together for long periods of time. They get together, they figure stuff out. Now, what's weird would be...
All right. So I just wanted to play that because it's, the guy with the white hair, is talking to the other guy with the brownish black hair. Asked him, well, what's the deep state? Because the other guy, not without the jacket, he said, because he is like an expert in assassinations. And like he almost won literature prize or something like that, or maybe he did, I don't know, for his work on the subject. So anyway, his definition of deep state, I'm sure, is credible. And it's credible for me. But the thing is, if you're going to put somebody in the deep state or in deep shit or in whatever group that you're going to put them in, well, okay, one thing is, if you're grouping them into a group that you can think is bad, then you're making them your enemy. Okay? Well, you have to decide who your enemies are, but you should be careful in that process, because if you only make your life worse if you make enemies. The more enemies you make, the worse your life will be. All right, so you don't want to really try to make enemies. That's why America, I advise America, look, don't make enemies, especially not with our allies. When Trump's putting all these tariffs out, that's like making enemies. Anyway, not helping Ukraine. That's like passive aggressive. I mean, we started helping them, then we're not going to help them, just based on who the president is. Look, you know, I mean, Trump could put him in NATO. He don't want to put him in NATO. All right, that's an act of like aggression right there. If he puts him in NATO, then America's obliged to support him because of the Article 5 in NATO. It's like the Three Musketeers. If anybody is hurt, then everybody else will come to their aid. Okay, that's what it is. And it means in war too. So, you know, it's all about putting people in groups. You know, so whatever kind of group you're going to put somebody in, you know, I'm just saying, you know, be careful about it for one thing, because you don't want to make enemies needlessly, and sometimes it ain't necessary to put people in groups anyway. You know. So anyway, you know, that's. But if there is some kind of a war, like sometimes, you know, it's like we are at war with the deep state, because the deep state or whatever is the placeholder, you might say, for all this undercover stuff. And nobody can deny that the world is run through the kings and the queens and the court rulers. They're undercover. Actually, we know who they are because, you know, they got money and influence. Money, power, and influence. Most people don't know how much money and power and influence people that are the heads of certain big corporations and stuff like that have. You know, and that's why the guy here, last comment was the military-industrial complex, because that's the whole everything for war, all the supplies and the weapons, and even, you know, the men, our military, you know, and everything else that supports our military, and the industrial complex. We're gonna make money off that, and if we go to war, they make money. So there's a certain group of people, you know, they want us to go to war, because then they'll make money. You know, it's part of what they call the deep state. But then who's involved? You know, are the other people involved? People make alliances all over, but you know, they're kind of invisible because they're private, and it's not in the best interest of everything being exposed, because there's always more power in a secret. Just like there is a certain amount of power in a lie, but it's like, it's bad to use lies. That's like bad magic. Because what that will do is that will cast a spell on you, and it'll also be the whip that your back is ever whipped. Your back can't be whipped with the truth. You can be strengthened by the truth, but you will be chastised and live a life in hell because of a lie. That's why it's a very bad thing to ever lie about somebody else. Because if you hurt somebody else like that with a lie, I just don't see how in all eternity, whatever your soul, your conscience, however long it might live or whatever, what it might be, is not going to be affected in a bad way, you know, from a lie. You can heal if somebody lies about you, of course you can heal. But if you lie about somebody else or to somebody, that's playing with fire right there. And, you know, look, if you want to really go to war and see somebody's head get blown off, that's where war takes you to, and that's where lies will take you to. The war that I fought in was based on a lie. And I had to shuffle a lot of body bags and think about it. Yeah. Anyway, that's it, you know. I just want to use the deep state as an example of, you know, Sun Tzu's message, you know, to us. and what I want to, relay to you. And it's necessary to, understand the spirit of Jesus, the spirit of the Buddha, and also the spirit of Sun Tzu. All right, bye.